Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm delighted that we're now on the sixth session of the AI in Education series. And gosh, we've had great attendance and great speakers. So it's really great to have everyone here today. This week's talk is entitled Adopting AI into Your Everyday Work, Part 2. And it'll be given by the University of Liverpool's Ben McGray and Rob Lindsay. And it's my great pleasure to welcome Ben and Rob back to us today. As we all know from their last visit, Ben and Rob are joining us from the Centre of Innovation in Education. And both Ben and Rob work to support academic colleagues and program teams in the enhancement of the student experience through effective curriculum, module, and assessment design. So Ben and Rob bring a host of experience around practical use of generative AI, and Rob is currently serving as the chair for the Generative AI in Education Working Group at the University of Liverpool. So we're delighted to have you both again with us today. But now before I hand over to you guys, I just want to remind attendees that any unapproved digital assistants that are added to today's session will be removed, but that the session is fully recorded and it'll be made publicly available after today's talk. So without any further delay, I'll now hand over to Ben and Rob.
Thanks, Catherine. I'll kick things off, if that's okay with everyone, and we're going to sort of tag team today's session in that I'll present and share my screen for maybe the first 15-20 minutes, then we'll hand over to Rob, and then we can have a discussion maybe 20 minutes at the end on any sort of topics that we will cover. So I'll just share a couple of things with you before I start. I'm just going to put a link to a Miro board I'm going to share on screen in a second, as well as I'll see if I can find. No, I'll do it afterwards. I've got some slides that might help around using AI for research, which I'm going to cover in my section. So thanks for those who have put into the Padlet board, which Rob shared in the chat. I'll just bring that up in a second. We don't need to see any data there. We don't need to see that yet. So yeah, feel free to obviously use the chat, as one of us will be monitoring it as we're presenting. But yeah, we looked at some of the responses as well as the feedback we got from the first session that we ran. And we thought we would cover these topics under, you can see Rob and Ben's list today. So I'll, like I said, mainly cover things around using AI for research, around all these sorts of different areas. And Rob will cover the second part around things like AI apps, chatbots, creating avatars, making the most of the prompts that you put into the AI. Now, I'm just going to switch back to that Miro board I've shared with you, because this was designed by our colleague Tunde Varga-Atkins and a colleague in the Chinese campus we have at Liverpool. XJTLU is the acronym for it. But it more or less, it's compiled the use of AI for all these different sort of aspects if you're doing or carrying out research, and how you can sort of use AI to sort of benefit all these different areas, from everything from doing administration, literature reviews, data collection, and then if I just scroll down slightly, and then we've got things around like dissemination, how to help with the reporting aspect, and data analysis as well. So I'll just cover some of these tools just to highlight them today. Let's have a look at sort of literature reviews to begin with, this research rabbit. So in fact, I'll just open it up on here. I should have it open. I think Research Rabbit's been going for a while now. I think if you have had to do any sort of literature reviews, the way that it works is you can log in for free, so you can sign up with your university or personal account, and then the way that it works is if you start adding papers that you know that you're working on, or maybe it's something that's personal to you, or a topic that you're sort of looking into, you sort of add, when you go into here, just add the papers, find the title, find something, I don't know, around generative AI, for example, and click search. It starts going through its own database and looking at whatever's available in here. So if I add, for example, just this one for now, close that down, the paper starts to appear in here. And then when you click on it, it gives you a bit of a sort of summary around it. And then normally you can start to compile more and more and use these features. Now it must be analyzed, and I'll see if I've got this one open. So this is where the AI normally kicks in. It's normally when it can find similar work or similar papers. So this is the AI sort of working in the background, where it sort of generates a list of different authors and papers that it thinks are linked in the paper itself. And then normally it makes the sort of connections around other papers or similar things from like the reference and such. And you can see here, as soon as you start going through any of these papers, it brings up a version of it. I can download a version of the paper here. So it opens that up. And then I can start going, I think that's why it's called Research Rabbit, down the rabbit hole of sort of finding that work. So if you're having to do that sort of compiling of a literature review for your own papers, or you want to look at a particular topic, this is really nice around that. Now, it doesn't have that AI where you can sort of prompt it and put inputs. Not that I've seen in here. I haven't used this for a while. But just for that sort of compilation of bringing papers together, that's a really nice, useful tool for that. Someone was asking around on our Padlet board around just that sort of dissemination of data, that data collection. So I just wanted to show you this tool for data analysis called Power Drill. Again, I've used it very briefly, but just to show you some raw data. So we did a while ago a sort of review of our virtual learning environment. We changed systems to Canvas from Blackboard. I might have mentioned this in the first meeting. And then we surveyed the students just with a, can't remember what the tool was. It might have been Bristol Online Survey. Don't know if that's available to yourselves, but it's just a standard survey tool. And then you can sort of download the raw data from it as a Excel spreadsheet. So you can see here, it's just very raw data. It's got each question as a column. We've got some quantitative data, and then we've got some sort of comments there as well. People just expanding on the answers. So what Power Drill can do, if I open it up on here, again, you can sign up for a free account. It looks a little bit messy when you first go in it, but if you start a new chat, it shows it here like a prompt, like in ChatGPT or Gemini, but mainly you want to add your raw data files in here. Now, I've not seen any limitations so far on the free account, but I wonder, I'll have a look in more detail if I've got the time, just to see if there's any sort of limitations on how many files you can upload. If I do one of these new chats on here, once I've uploaded the data, which it shows in here, it does some really nice features, the AI. It sort of generates a data report for you straight away. So you can see here, it's taking that raw data file and it's creating graphs. So it's showing me what the score is on this question. Question 2, what's the correlation? So it's doing all these sort of nice fancy graphs for me. I can convert it into a presentation. So I can change them into slides, maybe take any of these images from there. But you do get that prompt window in here. So I could put something like, can you show me some data around navigation for me to present to or to colleagues who work as academics. Just try and be as specific as I can. And then what it does is it obviously goes through that file one more time and it starts to generate some stuff. So it's a little bit confusing in that it starts doing all this stuff, and I was thinking, okay, is it producing some things here? But what it's doing is it's still analyzing the file. So there we go. It's got something there. So it's given the mean score, and then it's given me a sort of visualized graph. And it sort of breaks it down here at the top. And I can also, it normally allows me to download it. There we go. Transform the answer into a presentation again, which I can click, and then it'll give me a PowerPoint presentation, which I think with ChatGPT, the Pro version, you can do that as well. So you can see there, it's made a nice little slide, which I should be able to download somewhere there. So really useful for that sort of raw data and bringing it together. I've not used it because before AI came out, when we had to do that report, we got a student to do the thematic analysis of all the data. But you could do that in something like this as well. Run a thematic analysis on the general comments, and it'll produce some stuff. So I won't bog down too much into that one. The other tool I just wanted to showcase as well, I'll put a link to this one. I don't know if it's in the Miro board, which I don't think it is, but feel free to have a look at any of the links that are on here. Things like Quillbot you might have heard of. It's a way of being able to change the language of content. Gamma, I think we showed in the first session, where you can make a PowerPoint presentation slide. I just wanted to show Notebook LM again, because we had a look at this very briefly in the first session, and it might be useful for you if you're doing research, or even thinking of getting your students to engage in something like a research project, or if you've got like a reading list that you want students to see. So it's a Google tool. That's the link there. I'll put it in the chat, or Rob can put it in as I'm talking. And then you sign in with a Google account. And then when you go into it with the free account, I think you're limited to something like 50 of these notebooks. You then upload any sources, they call it. And this can be anything from documents that are in PDF and text format, or it says here any images, or even links as well, or even paste in text. So what a lot of students will do, or even staff, is they'll try and get access to the actual files through, have a look on Google Scholar, Research Rabbit, any of those tools we were looking at, and then bringing them onto this format in here. So I will just show you what a finished one looks like, just for time. I had a look at one a couple of days ago around Bruce Springsteen. He's quite big last week in Liverpool, did 2 dates. So we've had Bruce fever, and I think Rob's sick of me talking about him. But what you can see in here is I added all the sources, which were just PDFs I downloaded from Google Scholar or Research Rabbit. And then what it does is, in general, in the middle here, is it creates that area where you can start prompting it. So it sort of gives you a general overview. What you can do as well is you can discover, which is quite nice, like Research Rabbit, around something else. So if I wanted to find something around, I don't know, American rock music from, I don't know, 1970 started, didn't he, around then? You can start looking through and bringing in more sources if needs be. So it's quite nice if you've got something to start with. You can see there it's brought over a couple of things as well. So if I bring over a few of them, it sort of adds them to my collection. Now what's quite nice is if I click on any of these sources, it gives me a general overview of what that document's about. And then it gives me some prompts already that I can sort of ask the AI around that paper, but it only does it for this one if I do it from here. If I do it from the middle, you can see as well what's quite powerful is it gives you some suggestions around what you want to talk about. But if I put something in, can you describe to me what type of characters Bruce writes about in his music? It should look through all those sources on the left-hand side and then generate a little bit of a description. But what's quite nice about the description is it links to the files. So you can see here, it's giving me a bit of an overview. So it's telling me these are all the characters it has. And then these little numbers, you can see there, it jumps up with a little bit of text, which is coming from one of these. Now, if I click on it, it tells me that's the paper it's coming from. And it's sort of highlighting it. So we've seen this used in certain assessments at Liverpool or research projects where you can just get started, and rather than having to trawl through a series of files and papers, you can sort of go through it this way. As well as for learning, which you might have seen, you can do things like you can create notes, which is like sort of bookmarks of anything that you've done. But you've got these options here, which you've seen students use as well. So you can create like a study guide. FAQs based on all the sources that are in here. So if I do FAQ, it should generate it. There it is. And then we'll get some kind of nice little resource in here. And then the final thing just to showcase is the audio review, which is really scary. Let me just see if I share my sound. So there'll be a generate button on here. And then I probably showed this last time, but if I hit play,
the unrealistic expectations that come with it. And that's where things started to change.
You can hear that early hope in the music, though,
Yeah.
even when it's acknowledging the hardship. Like, take Born to Run, 1975.
That opening line.
Right. In the day we sweated out on the streets of a runaway American dream.
Runaway American dream.
Oh.
Even then, it's like, it exists, but
so that's AI that's being created, which is a bit scary. You might, if any of you've got Spotify accounts, I think at the end of the last year, we all got the opportunity where you could create an AI podcast based on what you listen to. This is more or less the same tool. So it's obviously analyzed everything in here, and then it's produced this nice little resource, which the students or yourself, whoever's using it, can listen to it, gives a summary. You can download it as well. There's normally a download option. There's a transcript area somewhere. I can't remember where that is. It might be under the Pro account. Just to let you know the difference between the Pro and the free. There's not much difference in what you do in here. You get all access to the this area, the sources, the podcast in the free version. It's just limitations on how many of these sources you can upload and how many of these notebooks overall you can create. And I've tried this morning. It didn't work for me. It's always a little bit hit and miss. But there's an interactive mode. So if you didn't want to use the sort of area in here, let's see if it does work. It might not. Yeah, it's sort of not working as it should do. The podcast will play in here. There's normally a little play button, and then you can interrupt it and go, well, excuse me, can you talk about Born in the USA in the 80s? What was the theme around that song? And then it'll obviously come in and they'll go, oh yeah, we're talking about this, and it sort of goes in that sort of American voice. They have talked about having more different voices on there to make it more inclusive. Some people hate that American sort of California podcast that's created, but it's something there as a resource that you can create as well. Let's just see if that FAQ has been created as well. So there we go. So it's made like an FAQ of all the stuff that's on here. Got stuff about glam rock, which must have been some of the stuff I put in, and then you can convert it so it becomes part of your sources. I don't know where it's gone there actually, but it normally adds it into here as a source. So yeah, really nice tool to use. They've added this feature where you can share it with people. All that means is you share the link and someone needs to have a Notebook LM account themselves to be able to access it and open it up. It doesn't sort of embed in like a learning environment or a website, but if you've got a Notebook LM account, then you can share these and give people certain access to it. So I think that's everything I wanted to cover on my end. I will stop sharing and let Rob come in to do his bit, but any questions I'll try and answer in the chat there. So Rob, are you all right to take over?
Yeah, sure. And if there is any questions, please feel free to just pop them in, at any time, because we can come back to these things. We're aware that there's quite a lot of tools available. One of the questions actually on the Padlet was around knowing where to look for AI supported apps. So I think one of the websites that we find quite useful is there's an AI for that. Sorry. So I'll put that link in the chat. Beware that this lists absolutely everything. So actually, it's possibly one of those situations where you've got too much choice and you don't know what you're going to look for. But it's quite a useful place if you want to just get an idea of different categories of AI. So this really will show you the sort of custom built things that people have been building at home. So be aware of the security around this sort of thing, especially through work. If you're working on any sort of institutional account, consider what the app claims to do. If there's any support, have you recognized the company name? Is it Microsoft or Google or one of the big hitters? If not, just be a bit wary when you go to use these. But what that will do is just show you where the sort of technology is going in different areas. And I think one of the areas that did come up again in the Padlet, which I'll pick up on now, if I just share my screen here, and I'll just move the camera when it loads there. So yeah, that covers the AI apps, but one of the questions was down here in the bottom left, and it was about how to create effective chatbots. And when we talk about advanced AI use, for me, that is one area of advanced AI use. It's the development of what are known as chatbots, bespoke chatbots, or perhaps agents. And what we'll do is we'll talk through how you can do that with a ChatGPT account. I'm just going to, if you watch those questions coming in, if that's all right, Ben, as well, one there from Richard, I think. But the chatbots, what we can do with these is a whole host of different use cases. So I've just pulled together some usage data at Liverpool of some of the ones that we've built. And this isn't all of them. This is just to give you a snapshot of the different sort of areas that we might be building a chatbot in. The top one that's been used over 630 times is about a research support assistant. And what that will do is help students plan and develop their research projects. So they won't actually write their research project within that tool, but they will have things like deadlines, different methodologies, different approaches to data analysis. And the way that we've built that is using the academic content and the supporting content, and we've uploaded it to our departmental ChatGPT account. Now, I recommend, if you can, within your department, getting a ChatGPT account for something like this, because what you'll find is that when you have it developed, as we've shown before, nothing within this area will train the chatbot. So it won't train the wider model, and it won't train the local model. So if I put in any sort of query here, it's not going to impact how that tool then works with someone else. So I know that it's a secure sort of area that's written into the OpenAI terms. The cost of that, we covered this last one, I think it's about $25 per user license. You need a minimum of 2 for a workspace. You can get your own one for $25, and it's in dollars because it's American. You could do everything that I'm going to show you now using your own personal account as well. We use a workspace one because we have different people accessing it, and we like to share what we do. But if you want to have a think as I'm talking through this, what might I use a chatbot for? And the first question was about an effective chatbot to support academics in their teaching and learning work. So if you want to narrow that down in the chat here, or give us examples like you have, Patrick, brilliant. Yeah, just let us know what you'd like to do specifically, and we can talk through exactly how you would do that. But the examples that I've shown you for how we're using it range from everything from research support, student support. This one here, Navel, that was a name that we opted to give it a bit more of a sort of personalization. That's used within a marketing or a management module where a colleague was facing a really large student count in that lesson, in that module. I think over 400 students, and they were finding that actually the inquiries they were getting, the frequently asked questions, were often the same. It was, when's my first assessment due? What time is my lecture on a Monday? Where's the support room, on a Thursday? Questions that actually are written within the handbook. They're on the VLE, the virtual learning environment. They're also delivered at the beginning of lessons, so they're everywhere. But students still aren't picking up on that information, which is, expected. We often miss things. So what we did was we built Navel to have all of that information, and students now get a link to this, and they can come to this, and it's almost like an in-between between the lecturer or the academic tutor and the student. So it's a first point of call. So they might say, okay, what theories can I use for my group assignment? What we've done in the back end is loaded the theories that are suitable for the group assignment to this. It will go into them in some detail, and students can then start to engage with that here. And this is really where we think that personalization is going to come into the learning experience. It's that being able to ask questions and get a contextual answer based on the academic content, but relevant to my question. And I can do that at any time, any day. So what I can do is I can come in and ask a very specific question then about deglobalization. I can say, tell me more. And what it will do is look at what we've given it, and it will look at the academic resources rather than the general wider web and the wider context of its data training. It will pull out the frameworks that we've said we want to use. And I'd be very interested if anyone else, Patrick, I've seen you're using it. Is anyone else using similar things to this? Danny's using Claude for interview questions and developing through that. That's very useful. Yeah, within the custom GPTs then, you can sort of consider what use case you might have it. So in the teaching and learning sense, it would be, okay, what am I trying to do to support those academics? And another area that we've done that within is academic advising in the School of Medicine. So the nice thing about these custom GPTs is once you've used one, you'll see it on the left-hand side here, and they are publicly available, some of them. These ones aren't because we've kept them within the institution. But if you want to look for very specific custom GPTs, go to that button there, and that will list the ones that have been developed by other people. And they're around research, writing, you know, all sorts of things, productivity, programming, anything you like. Have a little look through these, pull one out. There's video summarizers, things like that. And once you've used it, you can then sort of either go back to it by bookmarking it, or if you can remember the title of it, you can tag it in with an @ and the title. So our COPA navigator is our code of practice on assessment. I tag it in and I say, what can you tell me about feedback turnaround times? Often use that as an example just because we know it's within there. And what it will do is look through our 1,000-page plus document and pull out the different areas of feedback turnaround times. And the creation of these, when you've got that premium account, and it only needs one to build it, once you've built one, you can share that link with anyone. So then it's free to access for people that just want to use it. They don't want to build it. But to build it, it's as simple as coming to this Creator GPT area within the custom area. So now if you're thinking at home, okay, I wanted to build one of these. If you pop in the chat, if you've got any examples of what you might consider building something like this in, and we'll do one live here. So I'm going to do one now where we've just recently received the educational AI strategy from our partner institution, XJTLU. And what I'm going to do is load that into it and then engage with it in a way that will be able to ask questions of it and work through that. So I'll just show you how that works now. So the document itself, it's a case of giving it the instructions. So I say, I would like to build an AI strategy engagement tool. It's as simple as that. It will then come back to me and say, sure, what would you like that to be around? You'll see that in the response straight here. And it's what's called a no code build. So I don't need to have any coding knowledge to be able to build this sort of tool. And that really is where it's bridging the gap between sort of digital literacy of those that have been previously able to code this sort of thing, and perhaps your everyday user like myself. I'm not an expert in any sort of coding. You know, it's given me a very simple name. Okay, AI strategy guide. Yes, I'm happy with that. Yes, please use this document as your source. And in this instance, I can upload up to 20 documents, and these can actually be combined. So if I had a PDF of up to 1,000 pages, I could put that in as one document. If I wanted to add more, I would just create a PDF that had that and another combined into one document, and it would still only count as one document. And it does quite well searching through that. So what I'm going to do there is I'm going to show you, I'm going to upload the file. I'll just drag that over here. Here's my strategy document. And this has just been published by XJTLU. I'll put it in the chat because we think it's a brilliant example of looking at how to integrate AI within education. And it's something at Liverpool that we would like to emulate and work with them in understanding how they're doing that. And I'll show you what that looks like in the background as well when I can find it. So here we are. It's just generating me a profile picture. I'll move you over there. So I'll give you an idea of the document itself so you know what the source content is. So this is the document. It's a really nice strategy framework document. It goes into the vision, the summary. It's talking about the different areas of AI, how they're going to bring it into education at XJTLU in China. You know, really clear objectives, really nice document. But staff may have difficulty engaging with that in that they don't read the whole thing. They just want to understand different areas of it. What a tool like this could do is actually just give them that opportunity to ask questions of it in a similar way that Ben just showed with the notebook example. So that's great. I'm not going to do any more. I'll just say that's fine just to speed this up. And then what I'll do actually is just create it. I'm sharing options. I can invite people with the link. I can do anyone in CIE, or I can do anyone with the link. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to update it, anyone with the link, and I'll share that in the chat here. I will delete this after just because it's not something that we've sort of planned or prepared, but I will copy that link now, and you'll see how quickly we've gone there from just a document to a custom GPT that anyone can access. There is a limited use of it on the free account of up to sort of 10 prompts at a time, but these will reset every sort of 5 hours or the next day. So what we found is it has covered student and staff use for the number of times that they would like to often run a query through it. So for example, I could ask now, what's the vision? And hopefully what it will do is come back to me with the vision from the document. So we can see it reflects an ambitious, ethically grounded approach, and it's got the core vision. So recognise as a global leading AI empowered institution. Let's have a quick check of the vision. And we want to be clear that actually, you know, this takes some refinement to make sure that you've got it working exactly as you want it to be. So there we are. We're happy that it's recognised as an AI empowered institution. So that vision, you know, has pulled out from that. Just be mindful that as you are setting these things up, you're checking that they are working exactly how you want them to work before you deploy them. There is a lot of opportunity to refine them. So what we do is we do a lot of feedback with them, often where we involve the students. So it's been really useful to get students to be transparent in how they use these, talk through what they've received from it, and then go back to us as the sort of educators, where we will then refine it and basically co-create with them to make sure that it works for them. And that's something that we found that works really well across different areas, different disciplines. We've actually had students create their own versions of these, and one version that we've had recently is from a student, Casper. And this bot is a really interesting bot to support with the delivery of education for all different types of learner preference. So it focuses on a very different neurodiverse range of how we might engage with information. And again, I'll share the link to this if you want to have a go with this. What it will do is take any concept and deliver it to you in a way that might help you understand the logical development of understanding that concept. So have a play with it. Casper would explain it much better than I, but Ben, he was really sort of interesting when he came in, wasn't he, and presented this. I think you were in that session, and seeing students use and develop these tools themselves really excites us as well, because it shows their sort of level. Yeah, what did you think of that sort of use, Ben, for something like that?
It's strong, isn't it? Yeah, we've seen it now copied across particular modules, but yeah, it's been really useful just to ease that burden rather than having students to look at things like a module handbook or go through something in on paper form. They can sort of use this to ease the burden of staff, can't they? But yeah, it seems to come on leaps and bounds since like 6 months ago, hasn't it, in terms of how people are using it?
Yeah, and we've really enjoyed the sort of trial and evaluation of these. So we've done a lot of research around their use cases. We've got research papers being written on the different versions of the ones we've done. Another really interesting one is a dialogic feedback tool. So as you said, Patrick, setting these up as sort of personal tutors. So what we found often in lots of our feedback from students is that they don't really engage with feedback in a way that is useful for, first of all, improving their work, but also understanding what the comments they've got are, how it relates to the assessment criteria. Often they just get something and, they look at the mark, don't they? They don't really sort of engage with what they're being asked to improve or the critical reflection. So something like the dialogic feedback tool, what we've done with this one is we've asked it, rather than just to give straight up feedback on something, we've asked it to engage in a sort of two-way dialogic conversation about an example. So what I can do within this, and they're multimodal, so I can put in images. So if I asked for feedback on my poster here, this is completely random, I don't know what I've pulled out here, it's an occupational therapy woodworking poster. I'm going to paste that in and ask for feedback. Help me with this. And what it should do is, rather than just say that's a good color, you choose the right font there, it should come back and give me some questions and start to ask me why. There we are. It's great. It started to ask me, I mean, I might have to give it a better prompt than that. I might have to ask it, tell it what I'm trying to do and what I'd like to get out of it. But what you'll see is it's asking me questions rather than just firing off, what its verdict on that poster is. And that's based on a poster. So we think in terms of that use case, and it will start to do that with video, audio. You could do a summary of you might do a presentation, record it, upload the video, ask it to say what you've done well with that, and it will be able to do that if you give it the right prompting. It's really just that idea of actually these tools are getting multimodal, as we've referred to, so they can look at media, they can understand, or not understand, but they can at least interpret media and then give an output based on that. And yeah, as I was sort of mentioning, when you remember them, you can tag them in. So I might be working on one project and I might say, okay, now I want to ask Naval. I just do the @ symbol and it will list the ones I've engaged with there. So that will work for any of the ones that you've worked with before. And that gives you the opportunity to sort of work across very specialized digital tools in the work that you're doing. Is there any questions from that? Does anyone have any plans for developing these? Has anyone been developing them or would like to? Or is there any support we can offer you, now on how you might build a chatbot to support teaching and learning? I think the ones that we found that are working really well are those that help students really get that support at point of contact, where perhaps they would have to wait for a response otherwise. So we appreciate the workloads of staff, the time and the resources. If we can build these with the educational content, we can be a bit more confident in what we're delivering to them, at least aligns with our teaching, learning outcomes, and essentially context of the taught subjects. They also work for staff really well. So I touched on the academic advisor tool. What that is for academic advisors that are working in the School of Medicine. I have to find that one, sorry. And that is for people that are working with students and might need support on how they can best support them. So that should pull that up, but I might not have used it recently. So yeah, I'll find a link to that. And what we'll do is we'll share a link to some of these after, but you can see there it provides guidance for Liverpool medicine advisors. So each of these are very niche in those areas, in that they have a very specific task, and we give them the task. We identify the sort of scope of what we want them to do. We tell them who they might be engaging with, and we really ring fence them in a way that we're happy they are a bit more reliable. Do they need to be prescriptive to ensure the consistency of output for the bot? How do you mean by that, Catherine? Sorry, do you mean sort of very determined to the purpose of what they're going to be used for?
Yeah, I suppose when you're putting in the document, do you want, is it better to have a document where there's kind of clear parameters of information, so that there's not you're not leaving the bot to make too many decisions? So having it more supervised in terms of the kind of content you're giving it, or do you allow for kind of it to predict in whatever way it's going to predict?
No.
Is there a way to kind of narrow it down so that whatever you're feeding it, that it's going to be consistent in those outputs and those types of things, if that makes sense?
Yeah, really clear, really good question as well. So for example, our code of practice on assessment, that is something that you do not want to be interpreting, and you don't want to be giving out advice wrongly. And I would say that actually it's still not 100% accurate. So the tools are not right, they're not completely there yet, but we've tested it lots. We're very happy that actually it is on the way, and we think actually it will become eventually better. I would say this one's about sort of 95% accurate. This morning, my colleague Claire ran a query through it. It was wrong. I ran a query through it. The same query, it was right. It was one of those, why is this technology not quite 100% there, but it's getting there? And there are ways to actually improve that accuracy. So when you're giving it this creation in the background and you're giving it the documents, this area here, you've got two options. The create version is where you tell it what to do based on just prompting. So you talk it through how you want it to do, almost as a two-way process. And the configure option is where you can be really quite particular. So I think I've said at some point here, do not give it any interpretation. So you can see on that sentence there, its primary function is to provide direct quotations from the guidance, ensure accuracy, and do not offer interpretation. So I am basically instructing it, don't make this up. If you don't know what the answer to that question is, point me to the website where I can find that information. And actually with this example, we're still using that in a testing phase, because it's something, code of practice. We're not happy that we want colleagues to have any sort of error in this, especially in student cases. This one is a support tool where what it will do is help you look through the documents quicker and reference them. I think for absolute accuracy in this area, I would probably consider using Notebook still, because Ben, you touched on this, it's very good at referencing where it's getting the information from, which the custom GPTs aren't quite as good at, as doing that yet. So when I'm using my custom notebook and I'm asking a question, I'll say, what are the hallmarks? What you will see within Notebook LM is that it will immediately source exactly where in the document it's got them from. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. And if I click on that, it pulls up the actual source text. The only sort of difference between these two is previously this wasn't able to be shared publicly. You had to use a Google account. I've just seen that actually recently you can share publicly. So if you're doing something that perhaps is less creative and more administrative, consider Google in that instance, because you can at least then verify the source information very quickly. Whereas I think the ChatGPTs are better for that sort of working as a conversation, and perhaps creative thinking and things like that. So we might use this for module development, where it would give you ideas around module support. In terms of educational content, it will refer back to the content itself, and then students are up to sort of work from that information as they're going through the Canvas VLE as well, so through the online portal. So yeah, I think that's a really good point. And again, you can ring fence that sort of instruction a bit further through that edit version of that. But we'd be very interested, wouldn't we, Ben, to hear how colleagues might want to use something like that, in terms of the support they can offer students, staff, different areas of the universities, different areas of schools. it really is something to sort of have an experiment with and see what you can do
Yeah.
and play with and learn from.
And we're also looking at just embedding it into our existing systems. So at the moment, you have to go to ChatGPT or go into a separate system. You're doing a piece of work, aren't you, Rob, at the moment around Plato, is the tool called, which links with our VLE Canvas, where we could maybe have that sort of help chatbot that similar to what Rob showcased earlier. So hopefully in September we'll have time to experiment with it further.
Yeah, so Plato is a really interesting use case. What we're looking to do with this trial and pilot is bring this technology of the sort of discussion and the integration of a technology, but actually within the Canvas VLE area. So students aren't going out, they're not using a link. And the way that it embeds, it's the same principle. We identify the content we'd like to add to the platform. So we pick out the module content, the lectures, the power, presentations, and then students are able to directly ask those questions within their learning environment. So Plato will sit on Canvas as a little button. It's just a pilot for now, but what we're hoping to do actually is learn from that through the sort of personalized chatbot evaluation, revision support, so they can generate flashcards and things from that, get on-demand feedback for their work. And that's something that interests us greatly. We are going to run, we're going to evaluate that thoroughly before we embed it across or scale it up. I think that's the sort of learning for us, isn't it, around these custom GPTs, is whatever purpose you're building one for, design in evaluation, as we all do anyway, but make sure you factor in evaluation, user experience, feedback. Is it giving me the output that I'm happy with? Is it reliable? Is it accessible? They're all the questions we ask as we build these. And again, it's early days. It's been a couple of years, but we're still sort of learning what the strengths are, what the weaknesses are. When we first started building them, we found that they were really quite poor with links. That they just couldn't develop. You couldn't get a website link out of it. Now, I think they've built it. Let's just see if it works on Appendix. There's ways around that of giving it a link index and actually referring back to the source content from this should work. We'll see if it works. Let's see. It's not verified. That's good. So the link's broken there. So again, we're not super happy with that, are we? We'll see if the PDF works. I don't think that will work. I think ChatGPT, custom GPTs and links is a bit of a problem, isn't it, Ben? It's something we've found.
It is. Yeah, we've had to, even though we've said it only should look at the sources that you've uploaded to the GPT, I've seen it go to the University of Stoke or something like that when we've tried to reference it, but it has gone better. At least it's pointing to a Liverpool website this time rather than it's just that's a broken link, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah, good points that you made there, Rob. I know we've had feedback from staff who've said, I don't like the thought of an AI bot in my course, or I fear that students are going to complain that their service now is completely AI. So we're having to keep those elements in the evaluation because, make sure that human contact is still open, office hours are still open, there's a student support contact, those elements are still available, and we're not just cutting off that sort of existing process just for the sake of embedding something like Plato. So yeah, it'll be interesting how the evaluation goes. That's why we haven't sort of fully gone in with both feet, have we, Rob, for this, because of that element really in the feedback to things like NSS and student feedback really.
Yeah, I think we're very wary of first of all, the students' support. We don't want to have any impact on the human level of student support. That's the most important point. And for any issues of sensitivity, academic concern, we're not going anywhere near that. These are very much just sort of getting the students on board, first of all, with consent, getting them to sort of say, okay, if you don't want to use it, don't use it. There's no loss to you by not using it. We'll be delivering the sessions, in person as well, supporting them through that process and actually asking them, what concerns do you have? So involve the students at absolutely every point of the development of any of these technologies. Get the lived experience from those that perhaps find a technology like this more difficult to use. What are the barriers? How can we help them? And that's really underpinned everything within this. But yeah, I suppose the next step, and one that you might want to consider in your own context, is the use of tools to support things like marking, feedback. This isn't an area that we're at all promoting. It's just one that we're aware of, one that will be explored as, cohort scale and people are facing more and more students, where it's up to you to come up with that discussion of where you think the line is for suitable use of these technologies to mark student work, offer feedback. I think they will integrate more within VLE, so you'll see that as more common for instant feedback. but in terms of formative assessment, perhaps rather than summative. Liverpool, we're having those discussions. It's not something that we've explored at any sort of consistent level yet, but I think that would just be the sort of next stages. We've covered quite a lot on that list. I'll briefly touch on avatars, Ben, if that's all right.
Yeah, go on. Yeah.
And then in the background, if there's any questions at all for the last sort of 14 minutes, please just pop them in the chat about anything we've covered, anything you'd like us to cover. So avatars is very interesting. We're not using them extensively at Liverpool because we found that actually they have a cost to develop them for anything beyond. I think last time I showed you the sort of quick peer conflict use of them, didn't I? Where we had them as very brief avatars here, so they would talk through a simulation that we had programmed to do. So that's not an avatar in the sense that I can engage with it, but it is in the sense that it's a sort of replication of a video or a human form. These were free to create using the Adobe Express platform. So if you go to Adobe Express, what you can do is upload up to 2 minutes of dialogue, pick a character, pick a background, and create those very quickly using your voice or a digital audio that you've produced, perhaps using a text-to-speech platform like 11 Labs or similar. We touched on that last time, so I think that's covered in the recording. So what I will do is, so the next sort of step up from that is something called HeyGen. This is just one company. We haven't used them because there's a cost to these things, and at the minute we're sort of pretty resource limited. But what we're hearing is actually these are getting better in terms of, you know, visibility, reliability, inclusivity, and representation. So they're starting to look a bit more and more like humans. We're getting towards that sci-fi world of, you know, deep fakes. Actually, was it a person that recorded that video? Again, what we've had from student feedback is that some people really like this, some people really don't. Some students have a preference for a human face. We'll see, probably they do integrate more and more into things like customer support, and often that will then filter down through to education as well. You know, we had chatbots, didn't we, a while ago, with you go onto your car insurance and a chatbot pops up and you go mad because it doesn't help you and you can't get rid of it or through to someone. Similar experience in education through the chatbots and AI avatars. You know, do we want a 24/7 virtual tutor? Is that replacing a job? It's you know, a contentious area and something that people will be thinking about. But have a little look into HeyGen, and just as an idea of where that might take you. They're not two-way yet, so I won't be able to talk to this one and it will talk back to me, but there are platforms that offer that. So things like, is it Body Swaps, Ben? I think offers that sort of AI simulation where you can actually
weird,
talk to it.
There's that one of using people's voices. I forgot what that one's called, but I saw that Elton John was angry about it a couple of weeks ago, wasn't he? And other musicians, and there was a story here in the UK of a woman, a voiceover artist whose voice is now used on Scottish Rail, but she never actually did any of the recording. She does like voice announcements for something else, but she was absolutely fuming on the news about it. So there's all those sorts of things, isn't there? Not just bodies and avatars.
There really is, and I think that comes down to the ethical underpinning. You know, we talked in one of the questions was around ethical teaching. All of this forms the bigger picture of the ethics of this technology, whereby, you know, previously if you brought a voice actor in, you'd use them and then you'd pay them and they've done their work for the day and that's the contract. Now we're seeing contracts or hearing of contracts where you might record it once and then part of that contract is that they can clone that voice and reuse it. So it's a real impact on the creative industries and something to be aware of, you know, throughout this process of perhaps creating images. One of the questions was around infographics. So I think ChatGPT is definitely getting better at that. Previously it was rubbish with text, but if I said create an infographic on, I'll go for thermodynamics, before it would really struggle with that. And what you'll see now is actually it would take a little bit longer, but it's quite good at working down step by step and actually picking out text elements, visual elements, and just really creating something a lot better than it used to do. So the technology is advancing very quickly. I'll come back to that. Just close that. That's working in the background. Yeah, avatars for short videos, agree. And I agree with that, Mark, completely. They do feel artificial to me. I don't personally engage with avatars very well. I find them, you know, sort of annoying. I don't mind the audio where I can just listen to it, but the actual physical, visual nature of it to me just doesn't sort of relate. DeepSeek, yes, similar to OpenAI and Google Gemini. So this was in the news, wasn't it, about how it was developed, whether it can be trusted. It's not that version. got to find the English version first, but it's there's pros and cons to the platform and use anyway. There was a lot of consideration around the ethical creation of it, but then actually the big platforms weren't ethically created either in many ways. So I find that very Western focused. Because I've removed ads, it's not working for me. But if you wanted to try it, it would work on that DeepSeek website. It's keeping up with a similar function to ChatGPT and to Google. So they're often at a similar point of being usable, Ben. I think you agree with that, don't you?
Yeah, is it based on the ChatGPT 4 model anyway? Did they just copy the base of that, did they, and then
yeah,
just develop it further? Yeah,
they took one of the later models and then developed it. So the model selection's still available here, which people find, fairly infuriating, because actually, who can very quickly reason between advanced reasoning and best at reasoning? Well, what am I going to use? They claim that it will know the best model to use based on your prompt. There was a question about prompt engineering and prompt optimization. And for that one, I would argue just ask it what you want it to do first. So help me write a prompt to create an infographic for thermodynamics. So almost as if you're using the tool itself to like a meta use of it. So what it will do is, okay, here we are. It's talking me through the prompt, and immediately I've got a better prompt than I used. So mine was just create an infographic. Actually, I can then very quickly tweak that to everything that I want it to be relevant to my discussion. Yeah, thanks for that, Keith. I should probably look into the models more. I do find for writing some of them are better. Have you got a favorite, Keith, for the complex prompts? Which one do you use for that one? Some of them don't work with multimedia, so those are probably the ones that are better for the text base, because they'll go in. I think the 04 Mini is much quicker, and there's definitely you'll see there's 8 models there. So if you wanted to really go into it, it's worth having a little look at those, and there is explanations around which ones are best for which tasks. Ben, do you have a favorite model?
Not really, no. I mean, I'll just go with the default to begin with. I've not really experimented with switching the models, but yeah, it's one of those. I've always found the AI is quite helpful in bringing up the prompts as well, and I think just being more accurate, isn't it? Giving it more context and evidence that you want it to look at. So if you went, don't know, write me a cover letter for this job application, it's going to be generic. But if you write this cover letter, highlight my skills in X, Y, and Z, and do it against this job description here on the link, it can be a lot more better, can't it? And so then keep prompting it. So I think it just comes with experience, because I've seen it when people use it the first time, they go, well, it's not that great. It's just very generic. It's very samey and light in what it wants. So I think it just comes with experience, really, of what you put in.
That's it. Patrick's giving us an overview there. So 04 for general, 03 for more complex. And I mean, I did used to sort of have a good handle on it. And because they keep updating it and releasing it, this is the sort of technology where if you're not spending a bit of time on it, weekly almost, you very quickly fall off the wagon. And we found that it's a very common feeling. So yeah, if you're looking for sort of courses and things, social media accounts are quite active in this, different educators. I think Ethan Mollick's very good at putting things like this on Twitter. And then obviously papers, but it's almost like the papers are outdated by the time they're published. So I think staying on webinars like this, Ben and I are still attending these every week just to try and keep up with our knowledge. So it's great to have, Patrick, your input on that. 5 minutes to go. That looks like it's frozen, but you can see it's actually managed to get some text and an image in there. So it is better for that. Yeah, anything you want to cover in the last 5 minutes? Ben, any final questions?
I think we've covered everything. I've just put a link in the chat just to some guidance we've sent to staff out about prompts. So hopefully, you can reuse that if you want to for your own use, or even colleagues. Quite helpful for sort of learning, teaching prompts for designing like PowerPoints or lesson plans and things like that, or learning outcomes. But do have a look at our website. There's a few more stuff or things on there. But yeah, thanks for showing that, Rob. I think we've gone over everything that was needed on the Padlet board. So unless there's anything else that's come through. And sorry if the shadows by me, the window cleaners decided to turn up, so you might see my face going a bit shadowy.
No, look, you guys, thank you so much for this. This has been really, really interesting, a fabulous session. I think there's so much there for everyone to digest, and I think you're right. I mean, these things keep evolving so much. It's just so helpful to get walked through what that evolution is. So thank you so much for that. And as well, I just want to say thank you to Patrick, who's put a huge amount of work into putting together and running this series this year and bringing fabulous guests like Ben and Rob to us all. So thank you so much for doing that. And thank you for everyone who tuned in and joined. We'll have the recording for this put up with the other recordings. And so you can listen back and watch again. Thanks, everyone.
Brilliant. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.